Now, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States has approved treatment for Alzheimer's disease this week. The drugs are manufactured by the biotech company Biogen Incorporated. This is the first time a treatment regimen for the disease has been approved, but there is controversy over mixed clinical results for the drug, with doctors saying the results are inconsistent and that they need more proof. The therapy aims to remove sticky deposits of protein from the brains of patients in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. Those suffering from the disease experience memory loss and have a reduced ability to take care of themselves. Let's get you some analysis on the story now. Dr. Kirti Ranchod is a neurologist and board member of Alzheimer's SA. She joins us now via our video link. Dr. Ranchod, it's great to have you with us on the show on what is such an incredibly important story here in South Africa and around the world for people suffering from Alzheimer's disease and for their families as well. Can we begin with some context around, what Alzheimer's disease is, and perhaps, this is a common question certainly that I found in doing some research on the story, what the difference is between Alzheimer's disease and dementia?
So dementia is an illness that affects the brain and affects the cognitive functions of the brain, so the way we think, process information, judge, reason, the way we use our language, and it's slowly progressive over time. And Alzheimer's disease is one of the causes of dementia and is one of the most common causes of dementia in the world, but there can be regional differences.
So there's that very real link between these two.
Yeah, Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia.
Yeah.
So the other causes of dementia could be related to HIV, to Parkinson's disease, to specific nutritional deficiencies, and Alzheimer's disease is just one of the causes of dementia.
Yeah. So when you heard that the FDA in the U.S. had approved this treatment for Alzheimer's disease, I'm sure it's research that you'd been tracking yourself. What was your response to that, given that the criticism has been that there's actually not enough evidence?
Well, I think two things are important there. Firstly, the way the drug works is quite revolutionary. So that is quite revolutionary in that it actually removes these amyloid deposits. So Alzheimer's disease is characterized, as you very well described, by these sticky protein plaques called amyloid and another protein called neurofibrillary tangles. And so this drug actually does remove amyloid from the brain. But what hasn't been shown is whether it actually helps with regard to the clinical picture. So that's the pathology of Alzheimer's disease, what we will see under a microscope. And clinically, what we would see is the change in memory, in reasoning, judgment, the way we use language. And so the studies have not been conclusive in terms of the clinical picture and the clinical advantage of using this drug. And so that's where the controversy has come. Yeah.
So basically, the role of amyloid in Alzheimer's is debatable. Is that what you're saying?
The role in Alzheimer's is debatable, and so, but it is quite core to Alzheimer's disease pathology. And so removing it does offer promise, but we're not completely sure that removing it does improve the clinical picture, and that's where we need more tests to be done.
So in terms of the stages of Alzheimer's disease, it's a progression, isn't it?
It is a progressive illness, yes.
And at what stage would this therapy, I suppose the earlier it's brought in, the better outcomes in terms of that progression?
So this drug was only tested in very, very early stages of Alzheimer's disease. And so it wasn't tested in the middle or late stages of Alzheimer's disease. It has been approved for everybody, but it was only tested in a very small subset of people with very, very early stages of Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And no, it was just that in that stage of Alzheimer's disease, or even, as at the age we're at, or as you start seeing you have some memory problems or cognitive problems that are not Alzheimer's disease, there's a lot you can do to actually protect your memory and your other cognitive functions in terms of lifestyle factors. And so while this is revolutionary, there's been so much research on what we can do to reduce the risk to prevent Alzheimer's disease that is actually as important. I keep quoting this, but 20 to 30% of all cases of Alzheimer's disease are secondary to modifiable lifestyle factors.
Sure.
So lifestyle factors that we are in control of, like controlling hypertension, controlling diabetes, exercising, spending time with people you love. So, yeah, I think if we can actually focus on what we can do in those early stages as much as what a drug offers, we can potentially change the trajectory of this illness.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of what this means for South Africa, this approval in the US by the FDA, when does it translate into access to this drug as at least one of the therapies in helping with Alzheimer's disease?
I'm not sure when it's going to be available in South Africa. I'm not sure what the regulatory process is going to be, or whether they're going to require more tests to be done before giving it approval here. So I think there's lots of unknowns. The list price in the USA may be different here. It's $56,000. So again, it remains to be seen whether, firstly, people can afford it, whether medical aids will approve it, and whether medical aids can afford it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just seeing that now. $56,000 a year is what Biogen plans to sell the therapy for. I mean, it's really great news for the families of people who are suffering from Alzheimer's disease. But one just wonders, at what stage they'll, as you say, we don't really know at what stage the drug might be available here on our shores. But as you say, in the meantime, there are other therapies, those therapies that you were talking about before, to improve cognitive function, focusing on reducing hypertension, exercise, spending time with loved ones. I mean, do those kinds of interventions, shall we say, do they make a difference, or does it depend on the stage of Alzheimer's?
It does depend on the stage of Alzheimer's. It depends on the individual, but again, there's lots of research to show that it does help. There was one study done on older adults, and the study was actually done almost 20 years ago, that did a specific form of training. Actually, they did 3 types of training: memory training, reasoning, and speed of processing training. But in further analysis, the speed of processing training, so you learn something at a faster speed in essence. And, there were specific criteria in terms of doing this. But in that group, and in further analysis, and, there may be problems with that, but in that group, there was a reduced risk of 30% regarding Alzheimer's disease.
Sure.
So think about that. Just training your brain in a specific way reduced the risk of Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
And again, there's so much more research that I can quote like that offers not just hope, but is tangible, that we can actually do now to reduce risk, to slow down progression, to stay as healthy as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice for all of us. But are there certain people who should or would be more prone, or should look back at their own history, perhaps their familial history, to see whether they are indeed more prone to Alzheimer's disease?
If you do have a family history, there's a slightly higher risk that you can get Alzheimer's disease. But, if you have hypertension, diabetes, if you smoke, there's lots of other risk factors that can contribute to your risk of Alzheimer's disease. And in essence, the biggest risk is getting older. So as we age, it is important for us to look after our brain, what we're now calling brain health.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for all of us to do. The biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease is aging, and it's something that all of us will naturally do.
Yeah.
So, yes, we just need to make this important and make it a priority for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Ranchod, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning on the AM Report on what is such an incredibly important story. Dr. Kirti Ranchod is a neurologist, also a board member of Alzheimer's SA. And, of course, it's a story we're unpacking given this week's development in the U.S., the FDA approving treatment for Alzheimer's disease. It's still unclear at this stage when that drug would be available on South African shores.